I'm gonna get claimed. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Legends of Literature. Welcome back to Animation Station. I have been waiting for this moment for a long time. I am one of those kids that grew up with these movies and have so much very, very fond childhood memories attached to them. So, apologies if this may or may not be blinded by nostalgia or not as critical as some other people, but I am a huge fan of this franchise. I grew up watching all the movies as a kid, pretty much growing up with the actual actors and characters in the movies. And it's only gotten better every single time I watch it. So I'm just going to tell you right now, the lowest that these movies are going to go for me is a 7. Like, no joke. That's the lowest it's going to go. It's not going to be a 6, it's not going to be a 5, and it's going to be nowhere near like the 4s or below. This is all 7 and above, and it started off on a pretty amazing note, because I'm pretty sure this movie came out the exact year I was born in 2001, and yeah, I'm one of those people that grew up with these movies. I am a huge fan of them, I'm a huge fan of this franchise. So these are probably going to be some of the most upbeat and positive reviews you're going to see from me on this entire channel. So, with all that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, let's start our dive into the wild, wonderful wizarding world of Harry Potter. Starting with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or Philosopher's Stone if you live in the United Kingdom. Yeah, I even need to say that this movie's great. You already know it's great. It's the start of one of the greatest franchises in not just film history, but arguably in all of history, if you really think about it. Like, when this series was at its peak with these movies, when it was at its peak of popularity, it was unfathomable. And even to this very day, there's still a huge, huge fan base. And you can say I'm definitely firmly implanted on that side. However, there are some people that are a little bit critical with these movies, and I can understand if it's not really their thing. But me personally, I love these movies. I love the characters, I love the actors, I love the writing, I love the stories, I love all the surprisingly amazing CGI effects. I love the wizard battles, I love the whole lore and mythology, I love the locations, I love the music. I just love these movies, man. So, yeah, I'm gonna be one of those people that overly praises the ever-living hell out of them. And if you're one of those people that's annoyed by that, I'm sorry. There's the door. For the rest of you, let's dive into Sorcerer's Stone. I'm going all out with this review. We are doing the full, head-on written analysis on every single one of these movies. Well, not written analysis, you know what I mean. Like, full, all-out analysis. Like, bit by bit. So, grab some popcorn, grab some drinks. It's going to be a very long review. On the night of the 1st of November of 1981, celebrated wizard Albus Dumbledore, played by the late great Richard Harris, may he rest in peace, and his deputy Minerva McGonagall, played by Maggie Smith, meet up on Privet Drive in the Surrey town Little Whinging and discuss the deaths of James and Lily Potter, played by Adrian Rawlings and Geraldine Somerville, whose one-year-old son Harry Potter, played in this one scene by Saunders triplets, is to be brought to them by their half-giant associate Rubeus Hagrid, played by the late great absolute teddy bear of a man known as Robbie Coltrane, may he rest in peace. Sometime later, Hagrid arrives with the sleeping infant Harry on a flying motorcycle. One of the coolest things you will ever hear in your life, a flying motorcycle. Like, come on, you cannot tell me a flying motorcycle isn't cool. As the three walk to the front lawn of Privet Drive House Number 4, McGonagall initially objects to Dumbledore leaving Harry with the Muggle, non-magical family that lives there known as the Dursleys, as she sees them as the worst sort of Muggles imaginable, after spying on them day by day in her animagus form, a silver cat. Dumbledore tells her that the Dursleys are the only living relatives Harry has left since his mother's sister Petunia, played by Fiona Shaw, is the only Dursley that had Lily's blood in her, which ensured the protection of Harry and his family. After Dumbledore places Harry on the doorstep with a letter He wishes him good luck before he, McGonagall, and Hagrid depart, back to the magic world. 10 years pass and Harry, now played by a young Daniel Radcliffe, lives as a household servant to the Dursleys, who treat him with hostility and tries to be a seemingly ordinary boy. His spoiled cousin Dudley Dursley, played by Harry Melling, constantly bullies him, just like in the book. After inadvertently causing an accident on a family outing and receiving several unsolicited letters by Owl, the family moves to a two-story hut on an island. When midnight strikes on Harry's 11th birthday, a mysterious stranger breaks into the hut to the horror of the Dursleys. The stranger, who turns out to be Hagrid, meets Harry and informs him that he's a wizard. He gives Harry a birthday cake and his acceptance letter to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. And that cake he also kind of sat on, by the way. When Harry's Uncle Vernon tries to prevent him from going, Harry and Hagrid chastise him and Petunia for lying to him all along. After Vernon insults Dumbledore, Hagrid threatens him and Petunia for their actions by cursing Dudley with a pigtail, much to Harry's joy. And there's also, the scene where he talks with the snake and starts trying to figure out that has connections to this other world. By morning, Hagrid takes Harry to purchase school supplies from the hidden wizarding street known as Diagon Alley. After Harry purchases his wand, after bumping into Professor Quirrell in the tavern, Hagrid surprises him with an owl as a birthday present, named Hedwig. They stay in the Leaky Cauldron, the name of the tavern where they were to get into Diagon Alley, wherein Hagrid tells Harry the reason behind him being famous in the wizarding world. When Harry was still a baby, one of the century's greatest dark wizards, Lord Voldemort, or He Who Shall Not Be Named, murdered his parents with the infamous killing curse, Avada Kedavra. But his attack on Harry rebounded, leaving only a lightning bolt scar on Harry's forehead and rendering Voldemort powerless. A few weeks later, Harry boards the train to Hogwarts via the concealed platform 9 3/4 in King Cross Station. Of course, obviously without having a hilarious conversation with a muggle talking about 9 3/4, and he thinks it's a joke. I love this movie. During the journey on the train, Harry meets Ron Weasley, played by Rupert Grint, a boy from a large but poor, pure-blood wizarding family, and Hermione Granger, played by a young Emma Watson, a witch born to muggle, non-magical parents, who would both become Harry's lifelong best friends, slowly but surely. Upon arriving at school, the first-year students are sorted into 4 houses: Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. As Slytherin is noted for being the house of darker wizards and witches like He Who Shall Not Be Named, Harry begs the magical Soaring Hat not to put him in Slytherin, so instead it puts him in Gryffindor, which is noted for being the house of braver witches and wizards like his parents, along with Ron and Hermione, and pretty much the rest of the Weasleys. Aside from Ginny, because at this point Ginny is still too young to go to Hogwarts yet. She enters the picture in Chamber of Secrets. Harry notices one professor, Severus Snape, played by the late great Alan Rickman, may he rest in peace, the sinister potions master and head of Slytherin House, giving him peculiar looks. Which we find out later on, the reason why. Seriously, they did an amazing job connecting all these movies together into one big marathon of one big piece of lore. They did such an amazing job. Harry begins learning wizardry and discovers more about his past and parents. In other words, they find out, well, for one, that his father apparently was the seeker of the Quidditch team, which is pretty cool. At the end of their first week at Hogwarts, Harry and Ron discover that Gringotts, the wizard bank, was broken into, and a vault that Harry and Hagrid visited had been the subject of the robbery. Harry discovers his talent for riding broomsticks and inadvertently makes Gryffindor's Quidditch team, a sport in the wizarding world involving flying broomsticks, as a seeker. In other words, to put it simply, his job is to catch the little golden snitch that flies around that ends the game as soon as it's caught. While defending another Gryffindor student, Neville Longbottom, played by Matthew Lewis, from Draco Malfoy, played by Tom Felton, a Slytherin first year, later learning that his father was also on the team as a seeker. One night, Harry, Ron, and Hermione encounter a giant 3-headed dog named Fluffy, belonging to Hagrid, at the Forbidden Corridor on the third floor of the school, where Dumbledore strictly told them to stay off limits from, as it's supposed to result in a most painful suffering death. Die a most painful death, excuse me. The team's keeper, Oliver Wood, trains Harry and orients him about the rules of Quidditch. After a charms class with Professor Flitwick on Halloween, the defense against the dark arts teacher Quirinus Quirrell, they kind of just call him Quirrell in the movie, they never really say his full name, informs everyone that an escaped mountain troll has entered the castle dungeon. As the houses are led back to their common rooms, Harry and Ron fight the troll and incapacitate it to save Hermione. And I'm going to talk about this scene for a little bit too. They have a scene in Flitwick's class learning Wingardium Leviosa, and Hermione shows off her smarts as usual. And then, of course, this is also one of the first times we see Seamus Finnegan blow something up in front of his face, which ends up becoming a running gag throughout all the movies. And then Ron makes a remark about how there's no wonder she doesn't have any friends, and that hurts her deeply, and she apparently spends the rest of the day in the girls' bathroom. But they do a good job at bringing Ron back around later on, so it's forgivable. They are still kids, after all. They're not the fully developed characters that we know. Not quite yet. This is only their first year. At Harry's first Quidditch match, which is amazing, by the way, arguably one of the greatest scenes in all of film history, in my opinion, and yes, I will fight you on that. Harry's broom becomes possessed, nearly knocking him off. Hermione sees Snape staring at Harry and mouthing words, making her believe that Snape has caused the broom to misbehave with a curse. Hoping to save Harry, Hermione sets Snape's robes on fire, distracting him and others while allowing Harry to survive and make Gryffindor win the match. Later, Hagrid slips on the trio a name when confronted about his knowledge of Fluffy, inadvertently. The name, Nicholas Flamel. At Christmas, Harry receives his trademark invisibility cloak, once belonging to his dad, which renders its wearer invisible, and it also turns out it's one of the Deathly Hallows. Harry uses it to explore the restricted section in the library to research information on Nicholas Flamel, but finds a screaming book instead. That part's hilarious. Harry discovers a magical mirror which shows him a vision of his deceased parents. Dumbledore encounters Harry looking at the mirror after first dragging Ron there to see if he can see the same thing, but instead he sees what he wants. He wants to be the Quidditch captain and the head of Gryffindor House. Dumbledore encounters Harry looking at the mirror and tells him that it is the Mirror of Erised, which shows the desire of one's heart and how it could not help much when people wasted their lives after being driven mad by it. He then moves the mirror and advises Harry against searching for it again. When term resumes, the trio assume that someone is trying to get past the dog. Eventually, Harry learns that Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone, which, of course, is where it's called Philosopher's Stone in the UK, but here in the US, for whatever reason, it's called Sorcerer's Stone. It's very confusing. I don't know why they made that change, but yeah, that's why if you watch it in the UK, it's Philosopher's Stone. That's why you watch it here in the US, like me, it's Sorcerer's Stone. But I'm going to keep calling it Philosopher throughout this video because that's what it has in the written description. So deal with it. Which produces the elixir of life, which will make the drinker immortal. Hagrid, Hermione discovers that the dog is guarding the stone itself. Harry concludes that Snape's trying to obtain it. That night, the trio visit Hagrid's hut to get more information. There they discover a dragon egg which hatches a Norwegian ridgeback that Hagrid names Norbert. The three convince Hagrid to let Norbert go live with other dragons of his kind in Romania. Well, they attempt to, but are caught by Draco, who decide to suss them out to try and get them in trouble because he's a snake. Yes, he's a literal Slytherin. Deal with it. But not before some funny scenes with Norbert where he accidentally catches Hagrid's beard on fire. Which is pretty funny. On their way back to the common room, they are confronted by McGonagall, who takes them and Draco to the Transfiguration classroom. After McGonagall reprimands them for their actions, the four are given detention with Hagrid in the Forbidden Forest. At the forest, as everyone splits up to find a dead unicorn, Harry and Draco encounter a hooded figure drinking a unicorn's blood for its healing properties. While Draco flees in fear with Fang in tow because Fang's a coward, the hooded figure then attempts to attack Harry, only to be scared off by an arriving centaur named Firenze, a close friend of Hagrid's. Harry concludes that the hooded figure was a weakened Voldemort and that Snape is trying to get the stone to restore Voldemort to full strength. And he's half right. I'll explain later. After hearing from Hagrid that the dog will fall asleep if played music and that he revealed this to a man in a local pub, Harry, Ron, and Hermione conclude that Snape was the man in the pub and attempt to warn Dumbledore. Upon learning that he is away on business, the trio conclude that Snape will attempt to steal the stone that night and resolve to find the stone before Snape does. The trio, after bypassing Fluffy, face a series of obstacles, surviving a deadly plant, flying past hundreds of flying keys, and winning a violent life-size game of chess. Wizard's chess, which was also earlier in the movie. And the whole Wizard's chess sequence, in my personal opinion, is the best scene in the movie. And it's for a few different reasons. It's thematic. Having a giant chess board, literally one of the challenges be a game of chess, is amazing. Like, seriously, that was some really great use of creativity. And not to mention, some of the effects here are practical. Like, when you just see the pieces moving around the board, not when they start destroying each other, but I mean, like, when they're just moving around the board, that's practical effects. They're pushing that thing. Or it's like on a track moving down. Like, it's really creative and well done. And you could argue this is one of the movies that made CGI animation over practical so popular. And when it's done this well, you can't really blame it, because this is one of the most well done uses of CGI that I can think of off the top of my head. The other, obviously, being Jurassic Park. The trio use their skills to overcome the obstacles. Hermione uses her knowledge of spells to get past the plant, the Devil's Snare, using Lumis Salem. Harry uses his skills as a seeker to get past the keys and catch the one that unlocks the door before the rest of them try to stab through his body and his head. Nice little piece of nice little bit of darkness thrown in there. And Ron uses his skill at chess to win the chess match. However, Ron's nearly killed in the chess match when he sacrifices himself when he's mounted on the knight. And Hermione stays with him as Harry goes on ahead alone. And I want to point something out a bit funny here. In the Lego game, when you play this final level in the Lego game, Harry and Hermione both go onwards to the final battle, because it has to stay co-op. While Ron just trips on a sword and just lays there. It's hilarious. And I also love that all three of them get to use certain skills to get past each part of this trap door and these obstacles to get to their final destination. Like, that's a really nice use of character skill, and not to mention character development, because this is the part when they all start really becoming friends. In the final room, Harry finds out that it was not Snape who wanted the stone, but Quirrell, who reveals that he let the troll in, tried to kill Harry in the Quidditch match, and that Snape had been protecting Harry all along while trying to stop Quirrell. Then Professor Quirrell forces Harry to look into the Mirror of Erised. Due to an enchantment placed by Dumbledore, Harry finds the stone in his pocket after looking in the mirror. After trying to get Harry to answer what he has seen in the mirror, and failing, Quirrell removes his turban and reveals a weakened Voldemort to be living on the back of his head. Yeah, that's not traumatizing at all. Harry tries to escape, but Quirrell starts a fire by clicking his fingers to prevent his escape, pretty much revealing he's evil. Voldemort tries to convince Harry to give him the stone by pledging to bring his parents back from the dead, but Harry refuses, knowing he's lying. Quirrell then tries to kill him by strangulation, but Harry's touch, true mother's love, prevents him from hurting him and causes him to turn to dust and die. And another one of the coolest CGI effects you will ever see in your life. Then Harry gets up, Voldemort's spirit forms and passes through Harry, knocking him unconscious before fleeing. This time defeated, but not quite dead. Harry wakes up at the school's hospital wing. Professor Dumbledore explains that the stone has been destroyed and that Hermione and Ron are safe. And it also says that Nicholas Flamel is going to die because they decided to destroy the stone, and he only has so much elixir left before he has to go on to the next world. So, yeah, that's a nice little bit of context. Though I am a little bit sad we didn't actually get to see Nicholas Flamel in here, but you know what, that's okay. Quirrell burned at Harry's touch because when Harry's mother died to him, her death gave Harry a love-based protection against Voldemort. Harry soon exits the hospital wing after a hilarious scene where Dumbledore eats an earwax-flavored jelly bean. Oh, sorry, Bertie Bott's every flavor beans. I'm sorry, I forgot the name for a second. And is reunited with Ron and Hermione, with Ron once again brought back to consciousness. During the end of the year feast, Gryffindor has 312 points, Hufflepuff has 32, Ravenclaw 426, and Slytherin 472. The Gryffindors are upset that the Slytherins are the ones that win, but then Dumbledore interrupts and announces that recent events must be taken into account and has a few last-minute points to award. First, 50 points to Hermione for cool use of intellect while others were in peril, 50 to Ron for the best played game of chess that Hogwarts has seen these many years, and 60 points to Harry for pure nerve and outstanding courage. And then a final 10 points to Neville for the bravery of standing up to his friends earlier when they tried to sneak out to get to the trapdoor. And that's where we saw Petrificus Totalis for the first time as well. These last minute points win Gryffindor the House Cup. Pretty much Dumbledore saying screw the rules, Gryffindor wins. Suck it. Suck it, Slytherin. And all the Gryffindors celebrate their victory, as well as Hagrid. Before Harry and the rest of the students leave for the summer, Harry realizes that while every other student is going home, Hogwarts is truly his home. And Hagrid, in a really touching moment, gives him this adorable little photo album that has all these pictures of he and his friends as well as his parents. It's too cute. So yeah, that's the story of Harry Potter. It's amazing. It's such a great origin story. It's such a great adaptation of the source material. And it's fun to watch while also being suspenseful, dark, intense, and all kinds of crazy. Like, yes, the plot's a little bit convoluted and confusing, but all the pieces fit together really well by the end of it. It is an incredible story, and it does a great job bringing the source material to life. So, seriously, amazing job to the screenwriters of this movie. Then we have our cast, and it is, it's extensive. So let's just run through these really quick. Daniel Radcliffe as Harry Potter is amazing in his first ever role, as is Rupert Grint and Emma Watson. Then Robbie Coltrane as Hagrid. Well, Hagrid's always been my favorite character. Like, I love Harry, I love all the students and all that, yes, but Hagrid has just always been my favorite. He's such a lovable character. Richard Harris as Albus Dumbledore in one of his last several roles is amazing. Ian Hart as Quirrell is really good, but I feel like they could have done more, given more time. And he was given a bit more time, because there was a few, more than a few deleted scenes in this movie. I can't talk today, but yeah, great. John Cleese as Nearly Headless Nick is great. Maggie Smith as Minerva McGonagall is great. Late great Alan Rickman as Severus Snape is amazing. Arguably his best role since his role as the big boss in Die Hard. Zoe Wanamaker as Rolanda Hooch is great. Warwick Davis as Flitwick, yes, that Warwick Davis. Leprechaun Warwick Davis. Willow Warwick Davis as Flitwick is great. And he's pretty funny. David Bradley as Filch is great. Hazel Showham as Vector is great. Paul Mark Davis as the teacher is great. Nigel Ansey, I hope I'm saying that right, is also great. And then a whole bunch of other background actors. And then we have all the student actors here as well. Matthew Lewis as Neville is great. James Phelps as Fred is great. Oliver Phelps as George is great. Alfred Enoch as Dean is great. Devin Murray as Seamus is great, and arguably the funniest character in the movie outside of Neville. Lalia Sutherland as Alicia is great. Daniel Tamber as Angelina Johnson's great. Emily Dale as Katie Bell is great. Luke Youngblood as Lee Jordan's great. Sean Biggerstaff as Oliver is great, even though he only really gets one big scene to stand out. Chris Rankin as Percy is great. Julianne Hough as Gryffindor Girl is great. Danny Harmer. Trying to look for the major ones here. Tom Felton as Draco Malfoy is great. Jamie Waylett as Vincent Crabbe is great. Josh Herdman as Gregory Goyle is great. Jamie Yeats as Marcus Flint is great. Julie Walters as Molly Weasley is good. She's a lot better in the next movie when she has more screen time. David Brett as Diggle is great. John Hurt as Ollivander is amazing, arguably his best role. Bonnie Wright as Ginny Weasley is okay, but again, a lot like Molly Weasley, she gets more time to shine in the next movie. Gene Southern as Trolley Witch is great. Ben Borowick as Angus is great. Then there's a bunch of extras. Ghosts, muggles. Richard Griffiths, the late great Richard Griffiths as Vernon Dursley is great. Fiona Shaw as Petunia Dursley is good. Harry Melling as Dudley Dursley is really good, but man is he hateable as a character. Harry Taylor as the King's Cross Station Guard, the one that makes the joke about Platform 9 3/4, is hilarious, and the one little scene he gets. And then Keira Kennedy as the child in the zoo is also great. And then you have a bunch of goblins and Griphook and yeah. And then I'll point out the head goblin. He's voiced also by Warwick Davis. Who's also a uncredited voice clip of Griphook too, who doesn't really come into play until after, like way later in the story in Deathly Hallows. So yeah, they were planting the seeds for a whole franchise very early on. It's only 27 minutes. You guys want to talk about the differences from the book? Actually, no, never mind. It's way too long. But there are definitely a few changes from the book, and more than a few scenes that were cut for time. Okay, we can do trivia. Trivia is pretty short. When the film rights were sold and prior to production, she who shall not be named because she's a sexist bigot, initially wanted an all-British cast, but initially decided to allow the casting of Irish actors and actresses, thus creating a strictly British and Irish cast policy in order to remain faithful to her source material. This meant that anyone, regardless of birthplace, can audition or take a role as long as he/she is natural-born Irish or British. Pretty much saying if you wanted to be an American and be in these movies, you were screwed. Richard Harris and Fiona Shaw were both Irish. Rosie O'Donnell, who is of Irish descent, asked for the role of Molly Weasley in the film without pay. The same was done by Robin Williams for the role of Rubeus Hagrid, having worked with director Chris Columbus on Mrs. Doubtfire, 9 Months, and Bicentennial Man. Columbus saw both American actors fit for the roles, but had to reject them in order to adhere to Rowling's strictly British and Irish cast policy. I mean, I can understand that, but at the same time, you robbed us of Robin Williams as Hagrid. Shame on you. No offense to Robbie Coltrane, but it's Robin friggin' Williams. Dude. Shame on you. Irish-American actor Liam Aiken was a contender for the role of Harry, and was the first choice to play the character, being that he was of Irish-Scottish ancestry and heritage, being born in New York City to an Irish mother and an American father of Scots-Irish ancestry, and had previous work experience with Chris Columbus. While Rowling considered for a bit, she retained her stance that the part should be played by a British actor, which caused him to lose to Daniel Radcliffe. Some Americans were cast in specific roles. Zoe Wanamaker as Rolanda Hooch. Though she has made her name as a British actress, she was actually born in the U.S. Vern Troyer, born in Michigan, played Griphook, but he was dubbed over by Warwick Davis. Chris Columbus's daughter, Eleanor Columbus, played Susan Bones as a non-speaking role. Rowling permitted Columbus's casting of his daughter as director's trademark. Julianne and Derek Huff, yes, that Julianne and Derek Huff, the dance people, cameo as a Gryffindor and Ravenclaw student, respectively. The film was recorded in 2000 before getting released theatrically in 2001, and then released on VHS and DVD in 2002. Okay, so I saw it a year after I was born. Alright. This is the only Harry Potter film to have Harry, Ron, Draco, Seamus, and Fred and George's voices sound like kids, because beginning with Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, all their voices matured and got deeper, as Daniel, Rupert, Tom, Devin, James, and Oliver all grew older. This is the only film on DVD format in the US to use the Acoustic Strings Warner Home Video logo. This is one of the 2 US VHS releases to use that same music variant on DVD, but the UK version of the DVD uses the Synth Strings logo. Okay then. Despite being rated PG, the only graphic scene in the film is when Harry disintegrates Quirrell's face. Yeah. The film would currently be the 42nd highest grossing film of all time if Jurassic Park and Star Wars Phantom Menace had never been re-released. This is so much better than Phantom Menace, it's not even a remote competition. It was the highest grossing film distributed by Warner Brothers, surpassing The Matrix, until it was surpassed by Dark Knight in 2008. It is currently the 6th highest grossing film distributed by Warner Brothers, behind Deathly Hallows Part 2, Aquaman, Dark Knight Rises, Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, and Dark Knight. It was the highest grossing film in 2001, obviously, and the 2nd highest grossing film at the time of release, behind Titanic. Wow, okay, that's actually impressive. Then there's a bunch of mistakes. Let's talk about the box office performance, because you can't talk about this movie without that. Because if this didn't do well, we wouldn't have the rest of them, arguably. Harry Potter and the Philosopher / Sorcerer's Stone was the highest grossing film in 2001, and at that point ranked 7th all-time in the domestic market, US and Canada, and was second only, and now 46th, to Titanic. It was the most commercially successful of all the Harry Potter films, with $317 million North American, and a worldwide gross of $974.7 million, until the release of Deathly Hallows Part 2, which surpassed the record for highest overall commercial gross, which we'll talk about when we get to Deathly Hallows Part 2, and that one's now the highest grossing film in the series, which makes sense. It was the big grand finale. So, yeah, that's the voice acting, no, sorry, not the voice acting, that's the acting, that's the story, that's the characters, that's some trivia, that's the box office. Here's my final thoughts. Amazing freaking movie. Like, I have little to nothing negative to say about it. If I had to make any gripes, is that I feel like it could be a little bit shorter. Like, they did a great job crafting everything, and everything flows very well here. The pacing's fantastic, but at the same time, it runs a little bit too long. And I can understand why it did that, but at the same time, I kind of feel like if it cut out like another 10-15 minutes of one of those other scenes that didn't really need to be there, then it would still work just as well, if not even better. But that's really my only complaint. I adore this movie and this franchise, and this was one of the most rewatched movies of my childhood, next to Zombie Island, next to the SpongeBob movie, and it's one I will always hold in high regard. It's not my favorite of the series, we'll get to that one next, but I will always adore Sorcerer's Stone. It will always be one of my favorite movies. It is the start of one of my all-time favorite franchises. It is an incredible movie, it's a fantastic movie, and if for whatever reason you have not seen it yet, go watch it right now. You have absolutely no excuses at this point. Final verdict for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's / Philosopher's Stone is a high, well-deserved 9 out of 10. It was off to a great start, and it pretty much only got better from here. So, yeah. That concludes this very long review. I'm surprised it wasn't an hour. Wow. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this every single day, especially today, because I have another 3 videos to do on top of this, because I'm playing the catch-up game once again. But, I'll see you guys next time when we dive into my personal favorite of the series, with Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.